Hey guys, it's Benny Bassett and Amanda Kay. This is the only time we've ever restarted a video because I said a word that I was sure was right and was wrong. We are currently in Norway and Allison in archipelago.
There you go.
God
That's
bless.
a hard word.
A bunch of like little islands and a I can't even come. I don't even know. It's unbelievable here. Anyway, we'll talk about that when we get to the videos for this town. Right now, we're going to tell you about our 2.5 days, 2 days and one night, 3 days and one night, 2 days and one evening in Copenhagen,
We spent 3 nights
Denmark.
in Copenhagen.
Correct. That's a better way to say it. Words are going to be tough. But we were when you left your European travel heroes, we were in Hamburg, Germany. And so it was a bit of a travel day. And if you remember from the last video, I chose Hamburg because it was kind of in between The Hague and Copenhagen. So it split up what would have been a ridiculously long day into a couple long-ish days. So we got into Copenhagen in the evening, kind of magic hour, but it was a little overcasty. We're kind of getting we're late in the season here, so we're getting the real overcast fall weather here in the northern part of Europe. But it's still very nice. And I found us, it's called Hotel Bethel. They were wonderful, right on Nyhavn, which is, or Nyhavn, I'm not sure exactly, one of those two. But it's on a little waterway canal that kind of comes to an end, but it's where Hans Christian Andersen wrote a lot of his fairy tales or stories, and got some inspiration. And oftentimes when people share photos or images of Copenhagen, they use these colorful like row homes and restaurants that are on this stretch. And so I thought it would be such an awesome little area, and it was. But we got there and we went, checked into our hotel, dropped our bags in the tiniest elevator ever, and then we went to find this little restaurant, because Copenhagen is known for their food. And we had to wait, so we found just a local little bar that had a trivia night going, not in English whatsoever.
It's not why we chose the trivia bar.
No, we didn't know, but it was
a location issue. But
kitty
it was
corner
nice
situation
to stumble into something that was locally happening and just people watch. And
yes, which meant it was busy, and they had drink specials, and we busted and sat down for the music round, which if Americans were there, we would have aced it, because there's a lot of really pretty well-known songs from America, and then a couple we would have had no idea what they were from here.
Do you remember the name of that one?
Dirt Baggers. Something Baggers.
I don't remember either.
I don't know. It was a famous song over here.
But it's a hit.
Baggers Vance.
No.
That's not it. Sorry, Will Smith. But they had like a Justin Timberlake and Jay-Z song. They had Simon and Garfunkel. They had Destiny's Child. It was a lot of pretty popular songs. Anyway, also very good drinks. And if you shared and tagged them on Instagram, they gave you a free shot. What a great marketing technique. It wasn't the greatest drink, but that's what shots aren't supposed to be. So anyway, we went back to our restaurant. Really wonderful Italian. It was great. But it had a Mexican restaurant name. That's what made. I think it was Cantina. Yeah, and I was like, all right, that's fine. But it was great. And
if you're not putting hot honey on your pizza, you're missing out.
Yeah. I don't know what that has to do with Cantina, because it's spicy.
It doesn't have anything to do with anything, baby. It's just what we ate that night.
Oh, yeah, it was great, and olives and focaccia.
We had a lot of bread.
Bread and cheese, meat, bread and cheese, and mayonnaise. The next morning we got up early. Amanda had found this cool little boat cruise. It's not really a canal cruise, even though it starts in a canal, but it takes you out into the open water there in Copenhagen, and you go up north and see a lot of the old military history in buildings. The Little Mermaid statue, you see the back of her, and a ton of tourists. which meant we immediately knew that we needed to go up and see it on our own without the tour. But okay, at least it showed us where it was. Then it kind of took you back down. It did become a canal tour at that point because you kind of go through this little area called Christiania, which is named after Christianberg.
Yeah, the King Christian.
Yeah, there were like 4 of them or 5 of them, I think. But anyway, I think the 4th, who became king when he was like 12 or 13 or 14, something very young, and during his reign, did a lot of building in Copenhagen, and a big chunk of that was this area that they initially meant to draw in a bunch of people at first, like to build a little civilization there, and then the buildings got built and no one wanted to go there, so they just sold off a bunch of the buildings to businesses that wanted to start up. Is that?
I thought it was businesses were encouraged first, and the deal was that they didn't have to pay rent for something.
That was what brought them in. They
10
didn't have to pay
years.
taxes for 10 years. It wasn't rent, it was taxes.
Yeah.
I mean, no rent would be, that'd be great.
It was a tax haven.
Yeah, it
And then
was
a lot
the first tax shelter.
Yeah. I think
Literal-
what ended up
literal
happening
tax
is like
shelter.
a lot of much like Airbnb properties now, it'll be one owner buys up a lot of property and then makes a profit off of something that
Imagine that.
he had an advantage
All throughout
over.
time. Wasn't Airbnb first.
I mean, it was kind of a model for Airbnb now.
Yeah. But yeah, it was great. And then we went by a lot of the historical sites, the main downtown dig, the palace, the museums, like all this stuff. Again, we've mentioned this in videos before where like taking a little canal cruise or boat tour is a great way to kind of get your navigational bearings on a city and maybe you see a couple things that they mention or talk about in the cruise presentation that you're like, oh, that sounds cool. We should go see that. Yeah, we got back, dropped us off right at our hotel. Brilliant planning twixt the 2 of us. And
we purchased another city pass.
Yeah.
Which is
yeah. No, you're right. I was trying to think if Copenhagen had their own, like Oslo had Oslo Pass. I couldn't remember if Copenhagen had.
I think each of them have been independent.
Yeah, they're all like buy it through the city, which is smart.
But especially if you travel like us, and like most of the time it'll have public transportation included, and it's really geared towards museum fiends like we are, anything kind of culture related.
But they have food discounts. There's stuff for kids. There was some other stuff
we
too.
use it mostly for museums.
But museums for us.
And it kind of pays for itself within the first 2 museums that you see. So.
The public transportation is the easy one because you can just hop. It's like using it as a hop on, hop off, like the bus, except you're just hopping on and off the metro or bus or whatever you want, and that pays for it. That not for the whole thing, but if you do it enough in a day.
And to we're always on a mission to get our money's worth, so there might be things kind of included in the pass that weren't on our radar, but now that we have admission or access to them,
we're going to
we're going to milk it for all it's worth. So we went to the National Museum of Denmark, which we've hit a lot of national museums and art galleries and stuff, and this one I think was one of my favorites because in addition to just having like a collection of famous Danes' work and like achievements, it had a really cool prehistory collection. So a lot of stuff, from Neanderthals.
When she says a lot, she means a lot.
Like a treasure trove.
Because there would be like, these are the pieces of, like flint that we saw that folks had turned into tools, and at the bottom would be like, here's a bunch of other flint that's also used, but it was like not in as good condition.
Just like at the bottom of the case, just like
hundreds of pieces,
layers of arrowheads and stuff.
Yeah.
So like collections of like petrified wood and flint and amber jewelry that a lot of people were bringing.
Animal bones.
Part of the reason why they had such a great collection is because a lot of the spiritual beliefs from people long ago was to sacrifice things into lakes that ultimately became peat bogs. Peat is a great way to preserve stuff, and because a lot of people historically have used peat for fuel, like to burn it, you end up kind of digging up a lot of really neat treasure.
A lot.
So there's stuff from basically cavemen to the Vikings, all kind of preserved in these bogs, which is really special. So that's one of the reasons why they had such a wealth of it in Denmark. So we got to see their kind of like prehistory to medieval.
What years? What are we talking prehistory? Just for for Tracy.
Like for Tracy. thousands of years BC. So like I think up to 4,000 BC.
I recall there being things in there that were
Yeah,
like
maybe.
20 to 30,000
Yeah,
BC.
like,
That's what
yeah,
cavemen,
and
like
like even like
Neanderthal.
yeah, like I think there was a fossil of a kind of prehistoric deer or something.
Well, there were also, wasn't that also where the skeletons were, where they were talking about, or the skull, like from the lady that they found in and she was like,
that was the oldest thing they had found, was like a woman who had drowned in the lake from like thousands and thousands,
tens of thousands. Yeah.
Very, very old skull.
Because they were able, like, through finding some of this stuff, they were able to find different like human eras between Neanderthal and
Right.
Homo erectus or Homo sapiens. Sorry.
Right. No,
Anyway,
it was all three.
All three. Okay.
Yeah,
Anyway, they were, like they were able to find all this old stuff that kind of connected some lines.
Yeah.
And the Danes are good for some history, man. I mean,
not to jump too far ahead, but one of the reasons why they're able to boast such a large collection is because treasure hunting, I wouldn't even call it that. I would say like detecting is not subsidized.
National hobby.
Yeah, it's like a national hobby. Like you're encouraged by the state to turn things in, and you're rewarded by the state.
Yeah.
But also there's even without
an ethos. There's like a national ethos to, like, if you find something historical, you
there's
turn
like
it in. It's like part of your.
It's part of like your identity is to understand that when you dig up something, even if it's like very, very valuable, there's like this sort of cultural understanding that it belongs to Denmark. So much like geocaching or anything like that, there's a lot of people out there who kind of like, they call themselves detectors, and they'll go and do these sort of, they're not even archaeological digs, they're
out with metal detectors, some of them.
Yeah.
There was even like a section of the museum dedicated so you can meet some of the folks, and one of them had a checklist that was like, show up, ask for farmer's permission, go out, bring extra batteries for detector, bring cake to share if you find anything. Like at the end of the day, it was really, really cool.
Yeah.
It was cute.
It was really, really neat. I feel like I could get behind that. I would love to have a hobby like that.
But they did, it was a killer job. Probably, I think one of the, based on that walk through history and historical, and like the number of stuff. I think oftentimes you go to a natural history museum or something like that, and they kind of like, boom, this little section here is prehistory. Boom, this little section here is, Iron Age, or I'm skipping Stone Age, and then like, and you get like a room. This was
or you'll get a case of like, this is like a singular relic we have, and this was just
this was like they had bones. My favorite one, I didn't even share on Instagram, I realized, but there was like, they recovered bodies and burial sites and like learned a lot about burial process through time. But there was like a guy that they had just his skull and one vertebra, and each had like, he had died from arrows, and the arrows were still like, one was in his jaw and one was in the vertebra, and that's how they displayed it, with like this
very minimalistic display.
Yeah.
So they kind of walked you through like the timeline of
awesome.
Like prehistory Europe, but concentrating on Denmark, and then moving on to like Viking stuff, which we really, really loved.
And they had a whole like Viking display with there's not a ton of like ship pieces left, but they had enough to kind of show you how the ship. So it's like the base of the ship essentially, yeah. But anyway, like a ton of Viking information. At the end, they kind of had like this. You become part of the story and join the Vikings on Bjorn Ironside's raid or attempt to find Rome. And you walk through, and there's little videos for about 15 minutes. So kind of learn about how raids go in the story, that one particular story. And then I guess they're going to keep building on that story, because they're kind of redoing the exhibit over the next year or so to kind of take the next version, which is kind of, it's a long-term vision for the museum, which is cool. Anyway,
of the exhibit, they had like a timeline of like the history of the monarchy of Denmark, and the current monarch can trace their lineage back to King Gorm, who was not the first king of Denmark, but kind of one of the first recorded ones. And I mean, that was easily like 1,000 years. So very, very. Denmark boasts like a lot of old stuff. They're like one of the oldest sort of like nations. What was the other one? Like
Oldest
flag.
Oldest military. Oldest navy, anyway.
They have like a very like long-standing heritage.
Which probably has more to do with recording it than anything.
Sure.
And being able to find the history pieces of it. Anyway.
Or not changing anything.
Where do we go after that?
After the museum, we went to the commune.
Oh, Christiania.
Yeah.
Was that day?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, cool. We went there because we saw on the boat cruise this tower, Church of Our Savior, and we wanted to climb that because, unlike the other towers we'd done, we saw that at the top of this, the thing that freaks us out the most, which is being outside and exposed to the elements while climbing super tall buildings, is exactly what this thing was about. The very last story or two is just a spiral staircase on the outside of the tower.
And it gets more and more narrow.
Yeah.
Until it is not a staircase anymore. It's just a pinpoint up in the sky.
Yeah. Which seems ideal for us. So Christiania is mentioned that little area, but there's also like a little... Hippie's not derogatory. Like a little hippie environmental artists community.
At one point, they had like kind of like declared themselves as like their own sovereignty. Like they.
Well, they even the sign when you went in said you're entering Christiania and leaving the EU.
Yeah.
But we went there also because my aunties are up in the East Coast. They were in Maine. And they were in New York City, but they found this troll who was done by a guy all over the world. He's built these wooden trolls, and he's from Copenhagen. So I was like, we got to find one, and we did. And it was in that area.
And
anyway,
huge.
It was incredible.
What was his name? Something George?
Green George was the troll's name, not the guy's name.
Yeah.
I
There's
should
like
have
a
remembered.
Frankenstein and Frankenstein's monster.
I think it's Dambo.
Situation.
Dambo? It's something like that. It's in my stories. Or you can write to me and I'll let you know. Or correct me in the comments. Whatever. But anyway, then we went to the Church of Our Savior. We went in. We once again paid to punish ourselves so we could walk up to the top of this church spire. And I will say it was the toughest one on the outside. And I think because for me, every other building, the National, the Wallace Monument, the cathedral in Cologne, every other one we climbed was like built from stone.
Or had like modern day reinforcements.
This thing was like, you climbed up the middle, it was wood the whole way, and it was like creaky wood, and it just felt different. Anyway, we did it. It was beautiful. We were up there, right? Like as the sun was starting to set, it was wonderful. Anyway, came back down, walked back to our place. I really think we did this.
Yeah.
I think we did
We
that.
had ice cream for dinner that night. It was a great day.
Yeah, it was good. Following day, we...
Because we got on that boat cruise and saw the back of the Little Mermaid statue, we had to do our due diligence as 90s kids and 90s kids.
Before we walked home that night, didn't we meet that little cat? Boat cat?
Yes, we walked along the harbor and tried to find, when we were on the boat cruise, we had like picked out all the little boats that had interesting names, and we're trying
There
to
was
find
a Jenny.
There was an Amanda.
There was an Amanda. Anyway, a little cat that looked like my mom's cat, so we had to send her a little picture. Anyway, very sweet. Sorry, I didn't mean to break it up. We got coffee in the morning. We walked about 15-20 minutes along the water to the Little Mermaid. We also saw the royal, like there's a receiving area where heads of state and stuff get welcomed by water into this little palace area.
Yeah, instead of a helipad, you have to ride by ship.
Makes sense. Do it the Danish way.
Do like the little step and repeat.
Yeah. Yeah. Hollywood Danes.
Yeah, we went and saw the Little Mermaid statue, took our turn in line amongst a bunch of tourists to take her photo. Then
right next to it is the Castellet, which is like an earthen mound that was created to turn this area like into a fort, military fort. But it's built like a star. So there's a moat around a 5-pointed island essentially. And you get to walk through it. It's still an operating military base of some kind because there were dudes with guns, young dudes with guns. And anyway, we walked around. There's still a windmill on it. There's a church. Anyway, it's really beautiful.
Yeah, really fascinating structure too. It's so unique. Like there's nothing.
Not quite like that.
Yeah.
Then we had agreed to go to this food hall. We had kind of saved some videos from TikTok and Instagram and figured out things that we thought would be neat. And this was one that we were like, but we went and it was amazing.
I work in a food hall and it's like 10 times like the size and content
Indoor,
of it.
2 separate indoor buildings, and then outside in the middle and on the outside of them. So it would just everything.
Yeah.
Everything.
But
my favorite was the fish, even though I don't like to eat fish. Don't judge me. I don't like it. But the display, they had like...
It was kind of like the Pike's Place Market.
Kind of like Pike's Place Market, except they had like fish eating other... There was like a shark head eating another fish. They had like clearly done... There was some humor, some comedy, some...
They have a real artist putting together the fish.
A fish diorama, if you will. Anyway, it was cool. They even had lanternfish in there.
They did.
I don't think anyone's eaten that. I don't know. Maybe they're good. I don't know. Again, comment if you've had lanternfish. Had some good food. It was great.
It was
sandwich.
Nice. It's like one of the few times
Salad.
Ben and I will go like to different places.
Well, because I'm the only one with cell service, so I don't like to separate very often.
Yeah.
Gotta keep it safe.
After the food hall.
Then we went to Tivoli Gardens.
What is that for?
Tivoli Gardens. We spent an extra day in Copenhagen so we could go ride some roller coasters.
Yeah.
And we rode ourselves silly because the next day we were like, I don't feel so good.
I know, kind of to like turn it. We're both kind of roller coaster junkies. I think I might even love them even more than you do.
I get punished by them a little bit more.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's true. Well, I'm not good at spinning. Like this kind of, we found out, well, I didn't find out, I kind of knew. I like things that go fast, things that go up and down, things that go side to side. But if you spin me around, it's the sickest I've ever been in my life was at Disneyland. Not here.
No.
Was my friend worked at Disneyland and took me on the teacups and he goes, I know the fastest one. And I was like, okay. And ever since then, I can't spin anymore. He broke me.
Ride that was like that, like a spinning ride, but in addition to spinning around, it could also flip you.
It was like 360.
We didn't go on that one because I thought I would have to just like take a little spatula and scoop you up afterwards. But we went on several roller coasters.
To scoop something up.
Several times. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah. And we had our friend Chad from back home at shout out Red Rock Roasters. He loves Copenhagen and had suggested some places to Amanda, and
he really like went out of his way to like make me a really great list of recommendations, and he told me about this great cafe and bar called Stown that he and his wife Burma had visited. And Stown has a really cool tradition of only doing drinks during the week, but on Thursdays they
it's like family night.
Kind of. It's
casserole night.
It's basically like we will make food for one night and you'll have the choice of one dish. So you can come by and make a reservation to
and they tell you what the dish is in advance so you can be like, I'm going to get that.
It's
or
called
I'm not.
Thursday casserole, but it's not like Midwest casserole. Like we made a reservation and we had beef bourguignon.
Bourguignon, it was amazing. And like we told the lady there, we were like, we have been away from home for a long time. It's just nice to get like a home cooked meal because it really was made like that. And it's like one pot. You don't come in time. The pot runs out of food. You're done. That's like the one night deal. And it was wonderful. It was really majestical.
Mm-hmm.
And she was very sweet. So anyway, shout out to Stauen, Stauan.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to go, you should go. And then we were like, well, Tivoli Gardens is still open for another hour and a half. And we could clearly see that, like, and from just looking online, that it was a totally different experience at night. The rides still go to almost 10.
And we still had the wristbands.
So we went back in, took some photos in the dark, rode a few more roller coasters, and then we went home. And that was Copenhagen. That's how they say it locally. Not true. Yeah, and then we left for Oslo. Norway. But we're going to have to tell you about that in a different video because we have gone excessively over time. But we really loved Copenhagen, so it will forever be on the go-to while in Europe list. So good job, Copenhagen. Good job, Amanda.
Thanks.
See you guys on the next one. Bye-bye.